Okay, everybody, welcome back to a closer look at our PowerPoint presentation for the Romantic period. As I mentioned earlier, this video will focus on the vocal music of the Romantic period. As you remember in our previous video, I mentioned how in the Romantic period things became more extreme. The bigger forms got bigger and longer. The symphony had more players and lasted longer. But there were also newer, smaller, more intimate types of compositions that were created during the Romantic period, and this is one of them right here. So the first type of vocal composition we're going to talk about is called the art song. It was created in Germany. Beethoven was one of the first composers to write in this shorter, more intimate form. You could sort of think of it almost as the vocal equivalent of chamber music, in that it's designed to be played and sung in a smaller, more intimate setting. As you can see here, the art song is a composition for solo voice and piano. Now here, the accompaniment, the piano in this case, is a really important part of the composition, and it serves as sort of a partner to the voice. It's not just in a subsidiary sort of, accompanying secondary role. They're both really important voices in the texture of the music. Now, the art song is typically just a couple of minutes long. It could be 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes long. If you take a group of art songs and put them together in one group, maybe they're linked by a thematic idea, by a common story. Maybe they're all written by the same poet. There's some sort of unifying element to this group of art songs. Then you call that a song cycle. Okay, so definitely know that term. And the first important composer of art songs. Actually, Beethoven wrote art songs at the end of the classical period. But the man who really brought the art song into a whole other level was this composer named Franz Schubert. He wrote over 600 art songs and several song cycles. I'm actually going to be singing one next Sunday called Die Winterreise, a group of 24 short songs. All about a young man's journey through the winter landscape in Germany. Beautiful piece. So you might want to check out a little bit of that. Now, I'm not going to play these for you, but I want you to right now click on this link here and watch this video of one of Schubert's more famous songs called Die Erlkönig, or the Elf King, and it tells the story of a father and his son riding through the woods at night, and the son is frightened because he sees the Elf King floating behind him. The Elf King is trying to get the boy to come with him. He's trying to kidnap the boy. And the father doesn't see the Elf King, and the father says, no, it's just the wind, it's just the trees, it's just the shadows, don't worry. Then the Elf King comes and, well, I won't spoil the story for you, but watch this video and notice how, even though there's just one singer and one piano, how the singer has different characters that he's singing. So when he sings the father's voice, it's in a lower range. When he's singing the son's lines, it's in a higher range. When he sings the Elf King's lines, it's sort of a weird, creepy, sort of floaty character. Also, notice the accompaniment. Notice the lower end of the accompaniment in the piano, which is this driving, repetitive just this constant churning rhythm to suggest the galloping horse throughout the whole song. It's only about 3-4 minute long song, but it tells this whole story. It's like watching a little play, but just one singer and one piano telling you this story. So please watch this Erlkönig video, and it'll give you a good idea of what the art song is about. And then this other link here is to a group of songs, Dichterliebe, which means the poet's love, all different songs about love that this poet wrote by a composer named Robert Schumann. So you might want to listen to a couple of those. So that's the art song and song cycle. There's Schubert. Sadly, he died at 31. Who knows how much more he would have written. He wrote over 600 songs in just 30 years. Now, our next vocal composer is Giuseppe Verdi. Famous, wildly popular opera composer in Italy. He was very, very nationalistic. He was involved politically, not just in music, but he was involved in trying to get a unified Italian language and trying to help unify Italy. In the 1800s, Italy was not the country we know now. It was a series of different states, as though the United States were not all joined as one country, but each different state was a different country. If Oregon was a different country from California, etc. That's the way Italy was back then. So Verdi was very interested in unifying everything and creating this one big, happy Italian country. And often his music is referring to this struggle to try to find that unification. So that's an important thing about Verdi. He was an ardent nationalist, as you see. He was also a fantastic composer of melody. So you probably know dum bum 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 ba dum bum 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 bim ba dum. So that's a Verdi melody from his opera Rigoletto. And speaking of Rigoletto, here's a little description of it, and here's a link to that very aria from that opera. La donna è mobile, qual più fa il vento. So have a listen to that. See how Verdi's music works. And now we have the second of our three important Romantic opera composers, Giacomo Puccini. He was a little bit later than Verdi, also Italian, and his great contribution was that he started to write, as did Verdi too, but Puccini pushed it even further. He started to write stories about regular people. And you remember in the Baroque period, most operas were about gods and goddesses and famous historical figures, heroes. And in the classical period, it remained basically that way. But you remember Mozart, with his Marriage of Figaro, sort of pushed the envelope a little bit here and changed things with his opera about servants, sort of getting over and outsmarting the Count, which was kind of a revolutionary type of story to tell. But now, in the Romantic period, the composers are writing operas about regular people. And this style of writing about real life and regular people is called verismo opera. So possibly Puccini's most famous opera is called La Bohème, and it's a story about four struggling artists living in Paris, a painter, a writer, a musician, and a philosopher. And it's just telling the story about their lives. I don't know if you guys know the musical Rent, the Broadway musical Rent, but that was actually based on La Bohème. So if you know Rent, if you watch this, the first scene, the first 20 minutes or so of this video that I've linked here, you might see the relationship between La Bohème and Rent. And La Bohème basically focuses on the story of these four artists and their friends, but it kind of centers on this love story between the writer, whose name is Rodolfo, and Mimi, who is a neighbor of his and who's a very poor, sickly girl who does embroidery for a living. So watch a little bit of these videos here to get a better idea of Puccini's style and of verismo opera. And then finally, our last composer and most important in the Romantic period is this German opera composer named Richard Wagner. And remember, right in the beginning of the first video, I said that individuality of style is the most important thing in the Romantic period, and Wagner absolutely embodies that idea. He was incredibly individualistic in his style and his approach. No one wrote or conceived of opera like he did. In fact, he took care of he oversaw every aspect of his compositions. He not only wrote the music, he wrote the lyrics, he created the set, he designed the costumes. He even had certain new instruments created because he had sounds in his head that weren't capable of being made by instruments that were in existence at that time. So he had new instruments created. He was an absolutely original thinker. So read through these little points here about Wagner and his style. The most important composition of all of his operas was this 4-opera cycle. It's a group of 4 operas based on German or Scandinavian myth, like Thor and Loki and all that, Ragnarok, that's all Scandinavian Germanic mythology. And he basically wrote this 16 hours worth of opera, 4 operas of 4 hours each. And this opera focuses on a famous legend, mythological legend from ancient Scandinavia, Germany. And it's based on how a dwarf steals the gold that is held in the Rhine River in Germany, and he creates a powerful magical ring out of that gold. And for 16 hours, we follow the path of this ring as it changes hands and ruins people and creates all sort of havoc and destruction. And I wonder if that doesn't sound like a familiar story that we maybe have seen before in movies. Yes, that's right. The Lord of the Rings was based on this mythology. Now you remember in Berlioz's Symphonie Fantastique how he used idée fixe as a programmatic technique to remind you of this idea of the beloved. Well, Wagner did this as well, but where the idée fixe is a full melody representing the beloved in the Symphonie Fantastique, Wagner uses a whole system of what are called leitmotifs, as you see down here. And they are just short, they're not full melodies, they're just little fragments of melodies that suggest all kinds of different things, emotions, objects, people, seasons. Maybe you've heard bum bum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum bum. That's a motif. That's called the Valkyrie motif. And the Valkyrie were a bunch of women warriors that flew around the battlefields, over the battlefields on their winged horses, looking for the various heroes that had fallen and died in the battle. And their job was to go down to the battlefield, pick up the remains of these fallen heroes, and bring them up to warrior heaven, which was called Valhalla. Okay, so there is a lot going on in these four operas. I want you to watch all of these videos. I'm actually next week, I'm going to give you an assignment that will ask you some questions on some of these. But these different videos deal with the use of the leitmotif in his opera. One of them gives you a very fun, sort of animated overview to the plot of all 4 operas, which is crazy, and I'm not going to expect you to memorize it. Don't worry about it. And I'll give you a little quiz on these videos, but they're each about 4 or 5 minutes. They're not terribly long. Okay, so that's Wagner, and you can just read the in summary stuff, but mostly what you need to know as far as the elements of romantic music is that everything is much more intense, much more emotional, much bigger, much more passionate than the classical period. So that's about it. As always, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. And please remember that you have 2 weeks to do all your work for the Romantic period, and you'll also have 2 weeks to do all your work for the final chapter, which is the 20th century. Okay? So again, thanks for listening, and I'll be speaking with you soon.